Hello, and you are back in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. This is our 77th episode, and today we'll be discussing political nonsense, and the West has a 10-year plan. So we're going to get right into it here. We've got this headline from The Independent. It reads, Kristi Noem doubles down over dog killing, saying she was being responsible. And this really isn't about what Kristi Noem did to her 14-month-old dog, saying that she followed the law. She was being a responsible parent, dog owner, neighbor, things that make you electable, inserted here. But this whole thing is that with politics, it's less about the actual policy decisions and how the government can help the lives of the average person, and more about this demagoguery, these emotional responses that people force onto each other. And that's where all the arguments are framed. That's how voters make their decisions. They are gut issue, single issue voters. That's how a lot of people are influenced to do these sorts of things. And really, this is all playing into it. And of course, Kristi Noem is the potential Trump VP. So if Trump gets the nomination, he actually can run if they don't try and get him under the prison. That's what they're trying to do with this whole trial nonsense. And I've talked about how it's just complete freaking nonsense. It's absolute BS, but I could go on and on about that. Anyway, if Trump gets that nomination for the RNC, Kristi Noem seems to be one of the potential picks. She's in the talks for it. So, of course, she's Trump adjacent. She was also very much against the COVID lockdown. South Dakota didn't lock down at all in 2020, and this was because Kristi Noem basically refused to do it. So she's got a lot of people in the establishment, the legacy media, that want to see her taken down. And of course, they're going to use this to do so. And this isn't about it being presented that Kristi Noem isn't going to use the monopoly of force, use of violence, and ultimate decision making that the state has in a way that'll not only not benefit the average citizen, but degrade the average citizen standing in society. It's not about that. It's she's a dog killer, and dog killers are bad people. And don't vote for dog killers. Vote for the person who doesn't kill dogs. And that's where all politics boils down to. You just take out that issue and insert another one. It's another a label, another thing to label someone and get that emotional response out of a person. And that's really what all politics is. And this is, like I said, what most people vote on. So you have the whole, women shouldn't vote thing and repeal the 19th, and that gets a lot of play as an issue. And the issue is voting at all, right? The average person who votes and thinks it's a ironclad, tight system, that American democracy is actually a thing and it needs to be respected, and it's the best thing in the world, the concept of voting for somebody and doing all this stuff, is extremely problematic for a lot of reasons. It's because that the average voter, man or woman, is going into that booth and dotting in whoever gives them the best emotional response. Very rarely is it done on policy decisions. Is very rarely is it done knowing what the state is and saying that I know what the state is. I know that this person is going to use the power of the state to my benefit, to do the most amount of good for society, and then they act accordingly to who they think is going to like I said, use the monopoly on force, violence, and ultimate decision making in the way that'll best benefit society. Now, of course, being an anarcho-capitalist, I don't think or personally believe that the state can be effectively used. It's a criminal organization. It's involuntary, especially taxation. I've gotten into that, but the whole thing is that people aren't thinking of the state in this way. They're thinking of the person that gives them the best emotional response, or they're voting against the person who gives them the worst emotional response. This is why, we can talk about the 2020 election and how rife with fraud that was, but whatever. The people who voted for Biden were not voting for Biden. They were voting against Trump, right? So they didn't have this emotional response towards Biden that was in the positive. They just hated Trump so passionately that it was vote blue no matter who, right? And Biden was the who. and that's why he got into office, barring all the mail-in ballot nonsense and all this stuff. But anyway, that's the whole thing. This is how politics works, and I wanted to highlight this story here with Kristi Noem and the dog killing as a way of highlighting that they're not going to use Kristi Noem's policy positions and refute them. They're just going to give you these emotional arguments saying like she's a dog killer or she hates women because for her stance on abortion or any sort of thing. So there's some things that could get into the realm of policy, but it's going to be using that as the emotional response, saying like she's an evil person who kills dogs and hates women and yada yada, whatever sort of thing they're going to try and smear her as this, bad, evil person who's basically like Satan adjacent or Satan herself, well, whatever. But that's the whole thing. This is what politics is. Getting people to vote for you, for your party, is purely based on emotions and demagoguery. It's not based on policy and logic. And this is why democracy should not be a thing at all, regardless of how many people you don't give suffrage to. But that is the first topic. If you're still with me, thank you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we're heading into the second article. This is from Breitbart. Of course, I always link to the articles I talk about in the description, so be sure to check those out if you want the full picture of what I'm talking about. But the headline reads, Zelensky reveals U.S. and Ukraine working on scheme for 10 years of military aid. That's a full decade. So the Ukrainian president Vladimir Zelensky revealed that the United States and Ukrainian governments are working on a bilateral security agreement that would result in sending additional monetary aid to Ukraine over the next 10 years. So they voted to send $61 billion aid package out of a $95 billion foreign aid package, which I talked about. That got passed while all this nonsense with Trump was going on. They put the $95 billion foreign aid package, $61 billion of that is going to Ukraine. And of course, all of that is going to go to perfectly good use. And none of that is going to get laundered or be spent on absolute nonsense or stuff that isn't military equipment or weaponry or supplies. No. It's all going to be used perfectly well, right? This is, being, military weapons. I mean, the Pentagon only has $1 trillion in accounting errors, right? These are people we can trust with money, right? Of course, all the joking aside, this is one of the things that while you're distracted talking about Trump or whatever, they're doing this. So this long-term forever wars, empire building, this is what they want to do. And they want to set this up because if you get into this 10-year agreement starting in this administration, and then let's say Trump comes in, it's going to be harder to undo that set upon agreement than it would be if it wasn't there and trying to get the money while, you have to go basically get it through Congress and then get it onto Trump's desk and get him to sign it. This talks about Patriot missiles. That's what Zelensky wants. Wants more. Patriot has a $6 billion foreign aid package. $61 billion here, $6 billion there. It doesn't matter. And then to make this international, like I said, the West, you have the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, if I said that right, vowed to send an additional £500 million in foreign aid to Ukraine. So you've got the whole West in on this. You've got NATO, you got UK, you got the US in on this. Very much this is a lot of this with Israel is really about the geographical advantageous or the geographical advantage that Ukraine and Israel have in terms of their access to warm water ports and also just their ability to be airports in general. There's a lot of travel and commerce that can go through Ukraine and Israel respectively with the way, the Mediterranean Sea and the Suez Canal are very close. Mediterranean Sea for Ukraine, Suez Canal is very close to Israel. So this is why the West cares so much about Ukraine. Of course, having this proxy war that they're fighting in Ukraine gets them to keep Russia as this greatest geopolitical foe. We can have this sort of pseudo Red Scare to try and just whip people into a fear, saying, "Oh, we need to ban TikTok because of the Chinese and the Russians could do stuff to us, right? We need to regulate the internet to oblivion because the Russian bots could steal elections or stuff like that." So again, having this proxy war of Ukraine makes all these national security issues more of a legitimate thing in the minds of the people, saying like, well, we have to censor the internet to oblivion because of the Russians, and look at what the Russians are doing in Ukraine, and look at what Hamas is doing in Israel. We just have to accept all this authoritarian nonsense being pushed onto us because it's necessary. We have to protect the people because of China or Israel or Russia or whatever it is. And again, all of these countries are threats or perceived as threats because we're involving ourselves in business and places that we really don't have any right to be in. But of course, it's the American empire. It's the forever war regime. They're going to keep on doing that because it makes them money, and they like doing that, and they like being war hawks. And again, the people in charge right now want to keep this going for as long as possible. That's why they want to get this 10-year bilateral deal in. It's going to be a lot harder for the next administration to just straight up axe rather than trying to get it through if you get like a Trump administration that really takes a 180 on foreign policy. I don't think it would be as extreme as I would want it to be. It wouldn't be as isolationist as I would personally prefer it to be at this point. I'm definitely I'm not a full-on isolationist. I like trade, I like commerce, but at this point it would be far more preferable than what we're doing right now. But with that, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This is just some food for thought. Of course, I had a great featuring episode on Monday featuring Living with XXY. That was a great hour-long conversation, so you guys should definitely check that out. But we're going into the outro now. Thank you for being in the Velvet Room with Jokerthefool. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe whether you're listening on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, or Substack, and be sure to subscribe to my Substack, velvetroompublishing.substack.com, to keep up with Machine to Man and all my other projects.